Hello there. We're going to be looking at the question, should men rule over women? And we're going to look at this specifically in the context of a verse that has been used to say that, and that's Genesis 3:16. So I ask you to prayerfully look through this with me. Okay, so Genesis 3:16 says, and this is God speaking to the woman, to Eve, "Unto the woman he said, I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception. In sorrow thou shalt bring forth children, and thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee." Okay, so there we have, in this context, we have, of course, the creation in Genesis 1 and 2, then Genesis 3 talks about the fall of humanity, and these are curses that are coming against both the man and the woman as a result of their sin. So the main focus here is the last part of the verse that we just read, which, just to repeat again, it says, "And thy desire shall be to thy husband, and he shall rule over thee." Okay, so, again, something to, we're going to just look at different aspects of this and see if it means what people say it means. One thing that people say it means is that men are now supposed to rule over women. So I want to ask you, is there any command here that you see to the man to rule over women? Well, hopefully you can see that's not the case at all. All we really see is it's stated to the woman that the man will rule over her. Now, many have taken that to mean that that's how it's supposed to be. This is the new order under the fall. So we're going to see if that's the case. Now, first, just to point out something quickly, that even if that is the new order under the fall that was ordained by God, which we'll see in a second that's not the case, but even if that was, is that the original order? And just to see that it's not, if we go to Genesis 1:26 and 27, let's see how men and women were created and the relation one to another and their relation to everything else. Genesis 1:26 and 27 says, "And God said, Let us make man in our image, and after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them." So we see here that man, and the word where it says man there, in Hebrew is Adam, and means human, right? It's not gender specific to male, it's meaning human. And he made humans in his image, male and female, and they were given dominion. So you see that they together were given rulership. They were to be co-rulers over the world. There is nothing in the original creation that would even suggest that they are not equal one to another, right? So originally we can see they were equal. Their relation to one another was as co-rulers. They were given dominion over the earth, but were yet in submission to God. God was their ruler, and they were rulers over everything else together. Okay, so now what some people do is say, okay, that was the order in the beginning, but now under the fall, God ordained this new order. Now, first of all, even if that's the case, we believe that all things are to be restored, right? Like it says in Matthew 17 and Malachi 4, and in a number of other places, Acts 3, Isaiah 28. You know, we understand that everything is to be restored. So, we ought to be going back to the original relation between man and woman. Now, but we're going to address to see if this is even a new order of creation. So let's just get a little bit more context. Genesis chapter 2, verse 17 and verses 21 to 23. Verse 17 says, and this is God speaking to Adam, "But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die." Okay, so God says to Adam, don't eat of the tree. And that's in verse 17. Then you keep going, and in verse 21 to 23, this is what we find. "And the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall upon Adam, and he slept, and took one of his ribs, and closed up the flesh instead thereof. And the rib which the Lord God had taken from man made he a woman, and brought her unto the man. And Adam said, This is now bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man." So notice something interesting here. In the context, we see that the command not to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was given to the male, Adam, before the woman, the female, was created. That's kind of interesting. That kind of sets up a context for what happens in chapter 3. And it kind of explains one of the things that we'll get to in just one second. So notice, the woman was not yet created when the man was told not to eat of the tree. Now naturally, since they were created the same day, according to Genesis 1:26 and 27, it would just make sense that the male would tell the female what had happened in the time before she was created, right? As in, here he is, he's made, he's on the scene, he does what he does, and then God makes the woman out of him. And so now they are there, and they're in communion one with another, and they are obviously made for one another. And so they're going to talk. And obviously, what do they have to talk about? Well, I'm pretty sure Adam is going to tell her what happened before she was made, right? That's just a logical thing that they would discuss. So in that, I'm pretty sure he would tell her about not to eat of the tree of knowledge and good and evil, because that was one of the few things that God had said to Adam in the short time between his creation and Eve's creation. So now the thing is, when she decided to, go and eat of the tree of the knowledge and good and evil, what do we see? Obviously, she wasn't really listening to what Adam had said, right? Like, she did not pay too much heed to that. And she wasn't listening to what the Spirit had told her too. Obviously, she wasn't going after the Lord's instructions. She decided to just trust in her own inclinations. So, when we get to what happens in Genesis 3:16, what is this? Is this God saying to Adam, rule over the woman? First of all, would not that be contrary to the original creation? And second of all, what reason would God have to say to Adam, or what reason would we have to believe that God said that when there's nothing in the Bible saying that God said such a thing to Adam? All he said was to Eve. He said, and actually I'll mention one other quick thing, and I put a link below in the video explaining about this word desire. It says, thy desire shall be to thy husband. That word desire is not the most accurate translation. Historically, the way that it should be translated is turning. And like I said, I have information below, a link that you can take to understand more on that aspect of things. So the turning of the woman shall be unto her husband. So notice something. Pretty much everything that we see in these curses is not God trying to say, well, this is how things should be now, but rather it is a warning of the way things are going to be, the natural consequences of sin being brought into the world. It's not, it's not a decree of now, the new ideal or the new things, the new way things should be. For example, we have here just even the rest of the verse, and I will greatly multiply thy sorrow and thy conception, and in sorrow thou shalt bring forth children. Is that a new order of the way things should be, or was that the natural consequence of what happened? Well, hopefully you can see it's the natural consequence of what happened. So same thing with the second part of verse 16. What that is God saying to Eve, hey, look, as this, you have to be careful now, because now, as a result of what happened, you're going to be looking to your husband. You're going to be turning to him to, rule over you. You're going to be looking to him to make the decisions, and he will rule over you. This is a warning. This is not a command to the man to rule over the woman, or a declaration of a new order of how things should be. You get the distinction, right? In other words, look, isn't it natural that if the woman had, instead of listening to what Adam had said, instead of hearkening to his instruction in that regards, or what he told her had happened before she was created, instead of listening to him, she decided to trust in her own ideas, right? So it would be natural that she would overcompensate, right? It would be natural that she would say, oh man, look how much I failed, look at what I did, I should have listened to Adam. So it's natural that she would turn to him to give her the instructions from then on, right? That's just a natural thing that would happen. And so in doing that, it would also, since Adam had now engaged in sin and selfishness, you know, it's natural that he would, and natural not in a good way, but natural in a, this is what would end up happening, that he would now abuse that. He would end up taking advantage of Eve turning to him, and he would end up basically abusing that relationship, which is him ruling over her. So this is simply a warning from God to Eve that, look, this is what's going to happen. Now you're going to overcompensate. You're going to be turning to Adam, and you're going to be looking to him, and now he's going to rule over you. So this is a warning. Watch out, right? So again, there's many more details that could be added to this, and different aspects. I could explain this further, in other words, is what I'm trying to say, but that's not really necessary. That kind of covered the basic points, right? So just to recap, the basic points are, one, the original creation is that man and woman were to be co-creators, equal one with another. And so the context of this curse is that, man was created, he was told, don't eat of the tree. Then after that, woman was created. Adam naturally would have told Eve of what happened in the, intervening time between his creation and hers. And then she, of course, in sinning, chose to not listen to or to ignore what he had told her. So naturally, to overcompensate, she was going to turn to him more and listen to him, and he was going to abuse that relationship. He was going to rule over her. And so Genesis 3:16 is a warning, not a statement of a new order of the way things should be. So again, hopefully this was clear. If you have any questions or comments or anything to add, please, leave me a message in whichever way suits you best. But anyways, blessings to you all, and farewell.